Welcome everyone for to the CI meeting. In this meeting, we try to track all the CI, DevOps, and all things related to that for the projects of Meshery or all the projects that are around of it. If you have not written your name in the attendees, please do it. And the first topic today is uh, there is a new issue for track the Get Nighthawk CI. Thanks Abhishek and Cuma for creating that issue. I will work on it this weekend in order to have some progress. This Get Nighthawk is the new project that we are working on. Uh, and this issue is for create some artifacts for specific platforms as Get Envoy has in their web. So I will work on this one. It's just a GitHub action, and if I have some questions, I will reach out Abhishek or Cuma.
Sounds good. Do you have a plan of action on how we're going to create it by any chance?
A plan? Do you mean?
Yeah, a plan on how the action is going to be created.
Not yet, but I think maybe we can use a GitHub action to publish the artifact in somewhere, but I have not checked that yet. Do you have an idea how to do it?
No, so I can point you to some references. Basically, I've got a couple of GitHub actions that I wrote custom. Maybe that's a place to start with, and then we can build up your plan according to that.
Yeah, please do. If you can put the those action here, it could be great, Abhishek.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for that. I will be working on that this weekend. The second topic in the meeting notes is that we need more Cypress good first issues. Vishal already requests this because he wants to start creating a Cypress test. So this weekend also I will create some other issues to create a Cypress tests. I will create two more in order if one of you wants to start writing tests also.
On on that topic, I wonder the Meshery console adapter. It has a collection of scripts, bats scripts that perform but will perform mostly integration tests. I guess is what you'd refer to them as. Uh, and ignoring bats or Cypress or the 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 tech that gets used to do those tests, or for my part, I'll be ignoring them. I'm bringing this up to say that the other adapters could really use, once we get that figured out, that can be proliferated across other adapters. And so I'm tossing it up as food for thought. Like, I don't know if we don't have to make it a discussion necessarily on bats versus Cypress, or we can. It doesn't really matter to me which one. I don't have an opinion. Rather,
Yeah, I'm not. I think I am not familiar with that integration test. Is using guess or how do you use those
yeah, right.
integration tests?
Yep, good. If you can, can you navigate to the Meshery console repo?
Console?
Yeah, and if we look through this README a little bit, I thought that so Michael Gefeller had taken on this initial collection of things to do. If you look at the make file, or yeah, maybe it's so there's this a bit of an older framework called BATS, BATS,
Yep.
that he has used here to do those E2E tests, I guess is the make. So it goes into the test folder, it executes BATS E2E. Oh yeah, maybe there's a README under the test folder. I don't remember. I
Yeah, I
oh,
I set up GitHub Actions to run this BAST
okay.
test, and it's for end-to-end test. And do you mean that we need this test of in all the adapters project also?
Well, or I wonder, or yeah, I'm raising it up as a, as like, hey, I don't know that. In some respects, well, if you, yeah, when you think about it, we have the master test strategy doc that's mostly empty at the moment, but like these types of thoughts would probably go in there, and it would be things like, okay, hey, if you were just working on an adapter and you're making some changes, you'd like to confirm that things are working in accordance with how they should be, you don't have any regression issues, you probably, you're going to have a couple of unit tests, probably an integration test like this, because management software like Meshery, combines a few different things together. And so, in order to guarantee that it works, you do end-to-end, functional testing like that. Okay, good. So you'll want to, like, confined to the system that you've changed, in this case, the adapter, you'd like to be able to run some of those integration tests. Great. So something like this, I think, facilitates that. As you, but if you step back and say, well, hey, as an overarching system, what's the manager of these adapters, or how do these adapters run? Well, they get invoked by Meshery. That Meshery gets invoked by either users in the UI or users in the CLI. And what I'm pointing out is that, like, it's valid just to have integration tests here at this component level. It's also valid to have function integration or functional tests at that higher level, to the extent that collectively we can write an integration test once and either execute that same thing at a higher level or at an individual component level. If that's a possibility, gosh, that'd be nice. So we don't, so we got less burden. So I don't have an answer, rather than just pointing out, like,
Yeah, yeah, maybe we should create some issues in the other adapters in order to implement the same, right?
if we do that, that sounds like an immediate win, because there's a template to follow. It seems to be working. It seems to be relatively stable. It's Bash, which the majority of the contributors have some comfort level with, or there's lots of help out there. But are we duplicating our efforts if we have end-to-end E2E tests performed through Cypress at that higher level, at the Meshery, Meshery system level, Meshery server level, and then different tests written in a different framework over here? Maybe there's not, maybe it's a wash, or maybe it's not an important, like, the answer is no, there isn't very much, or yes, there's a ton, but still it's not very important because of certain things. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I will start creating those issues in order to start tracking that task and be assigned for to another person or other people that want to support.
Nice. And then, okay, good, perfect. And then I guess to try to answer that second part of the question is, like, when the functional tests, some of the functional tests we have for Meshery server, they get invoked through, as and when someone does a pull request, we invoke a few different tests in Cypress. Um, some of what, and it's fine that GitHub, as our workflow engine or our CI engine, um, repeats itself or does duplicative work, like tests the same things a couple of times, like great. We'd so much rather things get tested 19 times than 0 times. So, um, and in some respects, hey, to the extent that a different test harness, a different framework, Cypress over here and Bats over here are used to attack that same problem, um, great. You can get likely we'll have a more robust and higher quality function because it. But the trade-off can be the duplicity and the sustaining, the maintenance of the sustaining of those two. We may not, maybe we may not. I don't want. I hesitate to offer up a suggestion or here, but I'm raising it up as for a question for all of you, or maybe Rudolfo, if this is the week to potentially give an update in the community call about goings ons in this CI meeting, that might be a question that either you can answer, like just say, hey, this is your sense of it, and this is what you think we should do, or raise it up as a question for everybody else to pontificate on for a while. And then even at that, in the end, you're still going to have to say, hey, this is the answer. Like, unless somebody else has got a super strong opinion.
Yeah, sounds good. In which meeting do you
The,
refer?
tomorrow's community call.
Tomorrow's, okay.
If
Yeah.
you're,
Yeah, I can do it tomorrow.
nice. And I may be raising up, I may be highlighting something that's negligible. Like it doesn't matter. Like, I just don't know. When you had first brought in Cypress as an E2E tool, first of all, what a sigh of relief from on my part that I was taking it. And second, there was, the concern around fragility of the test and like, oh no, is this just, yet another thing to try to, maintain? And the things that you had highlighted about how to avoid fragility of how you're writing your test, like, great, that inspired a lot of confidence and so, but yeah, hence my question towards bats. And as we go to proliferate it across 10 other adapters, it's like, okay, are we setting out a long tail of sustaining or not?
Yeah. But yeah, we can start working on that. The other topic or the next topic in the meeting notes is consideration of Meshery production deployments. Uh,
That's what
Sean, yeah, can you explain this a little bit more?
it's what happens when Sean just joins a meeting. That's what happens. So Sean, to try to poke at you and harass you a bit. It was yesterday and by the way, before I explain this, just real quick, Sean, you can hear me, right?
Muted. Yes, I can hear. Thanks.
Okay, good deal. So Sean, I say this with a big grin on my face. So as don't, clearly I'm not committing you to anything that you don't want to do. But you came to mind when this issue arose yesterday. So to recap it for you real briefly, we were on the weekly Meshery call on Wednesdays, the Meshery development call. One of the contributors, he's refactoring the command line client for Meshery CTL. He's refactoring how it uses the a JWT token from Meshery server, so that whenever a user of the command line client wants to invoke certain operations, certain API operations inside of Meshery server, you need to also present, be authenticated. And yet we really don't have an authorization system yet. There's roadmap there. But so he was just asking the question around, well, like, okay, great. So it makes intuitive sense to him that as a user that signs into Meshery server, Meshery as an that you have a session, you'll grab your token, you'll use that token, you'll reference it on the command line, and great, you'll be able to invoke, do administrative things, do powerful things from there. Meshery server, Meshery, when you go to sign in, today, you can sign in, you can authenticate through a couple of different, or 4 different social profile systems, social logins, or you can say, I actually don't, I'd rather not. I'd rather just use this other provider. It's called None. Basically, you use Meshery in a stateless way, so it doesn't persist. It doesn't really. You don't really have a persistent session. You can't really come back and log back into that session, and it's fine. Meshery in that regard is sort of, I think of it as being like a tool that you just ad hoc, as and when, go over and grab out of your toolbox and say, I'm going to use it for a little while, and I don't really care if it remembers stuff, and I don't need to authenticate. So when you, as a user, if you choose None as the provider that you'd like to sign into when you go to use Meshery, it's an anonymous mode. It's still it becomes implicitly it becomes a single user tool, even though user is sort of it becomes a second-class citizen. The user as a construct becomes a second-class citizen when you're using it like that. And so his question was, well, okay, hey, great. So as I'm using Meshery CTL, the command line client, and I want to present a token, but let's say that I'm using Meshery in anonymous mode, in none mode. What then? And so we went through this exercise just on the call of showing what the behavior was. And the behavior is you sign into Meshery server unauthenticated, or I'm sorry, not unauthenticated, in a non-user mode, and a session is generated. You can download that anonymous user's token, present that to the command line client, and it will use it to invoke operations. If you don't present the token, then you can't invoke operations. And so, Meshery is secure in that way. Where it is not secure is that the token that's downloaded, the token that's generated for that session, it wasn't really a token, or like it was just a token with some static JSON that's static and the same for every, for like every Meshery deployment anywhere, which is, and
so it's not, it's either not, it sounds like it's not unique, and then it's also like it might be consistent across the installs, and then no matter what, of course, then it's also replayable as well.
And the first action item coming out of that was, well, there was some discussion around, okay, well, hey, in a production environment, maybe disable the none provider, or maybe mandate that everyone has to authenticate, so that sort of removes that.
Right. One of the problems we have with something like that is that there's nothing other than those social media, like LinkedIn, Google, ways to authenticate. It would be nice if there was a way to link it into like a LDAP or an Active Directory infrastructure. That way we could know like who and what, and then people could be assigned different roles. And that might be no small task, but it's something I think it'd be nice to think about in the long run, because there's some environments where, based on the need for that login with like a social media provider, like my organization can't use that. It wouldn't be allowed. So we'd have no choice but to, use the none mode.
I don't know if you can see how vigorously I'm shaking my head or nodding my head. Yes.
I called in on my phone today, so it's a small picture, but
Oh,
I'll turn the phone sideways. It'll make it bigger.
sure. um, that's just what you need is a phone size or a phone sized head of me. Um,
So,
your
one of the
apps.
things, we're doing some of our engineering in cloud platforms like Azure and AWS, and we're looking at like Active Directory, infrastructures that teams can leverage for access control. So that might, yeah, I don't know what the lift is there. Like I don't know what the level of effort is to take Meshery and make it Active Directory integrated, if you will, since there's already the ability to do the
Oh,
social media piece. I think there would be some sort of plug-in or some sort of module or something that would make it not too hard, but it's also, I'm not sure of the level of interest from the level of need from the community, right? Because it seems like Meshery is kind of more that sort of cutting edge DevOps, where it's more um,
loosey goosey. Yeah, I don't
well,
know.
it's kind of cutting edge, and a lot of the secure systems worldwide, they stay away. Many of them stay away from cutting edge, stay away from open source. That's changing now with like the Department of Defense, Department of the United States, Department of the Air Force, things like that, where they're working on DevSecOps pipelines with open source products. And I can't pronounce it correctly, but is it Titrate? The guys
Yeah,
that did some of the Istio work at Google, and then they formed their spin-off, and they had they're pretty tightly integrated now with um, National Institute of Standards and Technology,
yeah,
and kind of sponsoring. They're sponsoring like that. What was it? I forget what it was called. The
white
seminar
paper.
they had a couple weeks ago.
Totally. I'm with you.
You're
Um,
probably in it.
yes. So, we just yeah, I'm tracking all over what you're saying. Yep. So I'll say it like this. In the beginning of the Meshery project, the need for or consideration for the inevitability around LDAP, OIDC, blah blah blah, the Azure Active Directory, sort of the list, so to speak, the
Yep.
AWS IAM, etc., like that. Um, those were noted down from the start. Like, hey, as soon as we start to or authenticate anything, like and yeah, you're right that like often historically, and it continues to be the case that a lot of times you'll find the therein lie a line of a demarcation point between open source and enterprise, or like the enterprise version of that, like an enterprise add-on, if you
Right.
will. That's totally in the plans. Or like, yes. And I don't mean necessarily in an evil scheme to go, to charge people for that component. That's not what I meant so much about that's in the plans, but rather there's been a ton of work put in to make sure that the providers, the two that are there today, Meshery and None, that's a
Yep.
completely extensible interface, and that, to
Right.
your point, to support just authentication, yeah, pretty darn like that's not such a pretty quick. Yeah, I think the community can pretty quickly go accomplish that. For
Mhm.
authorization, to be able to say, all right, wait a second. So we know, I don't know why I would be explaining authentication and authorization to you. So never mind. Anyway, for authorization, it'd be a little bit of a longer. We need to lay out some. That's totally in. It's actually listed as a is it 3 milestones away
Mm.
to have a full authorization framework where, yeah, it's considerations, I think, and actually, Sean, this would be something great for you to get to hear part of your perspective on. I think it's considerations for a couple of things that we'd like to provide a lot of authorization around. Um, it's not just who can do what on the service mesh, what personas or what user groups are mapped to um, being able to change this category of configuration on a mesh versus this
Mhm.
category of configuration for that's more like there's some of the tools out there that might bucketize these, and I don't think it's inappropriate, but they'll bucketize saying like, hey, if you're in the app dev group, you're afforded access to change the retry count for um, between your services. If you're in the platform user group, then you're authorized to make changes to the sidecar attachment policy or what like and those are
Right.
good. Our perspective is, and this is landing in a significant way in the next Meshery release. There's early aspects of it now, but ours is
Mhm.
the Meshery authorization framework will cover in high detail the workloads as well, the applications themselves, irrespective of how that reflects on the service mesh config.
Yep.
It will also allow people to control the behavior of third-party components like a Flagger or an Argo CD or like whatever canary tool that you're using, such that
Mhm.
um, there's controls afforded around that as well.
Yeah.
Um, some of that was pie in the sky. Some of it's not pie in the sky because it's pie in the sky that there is an authorization framework to come forth. It's not pie in the sky that that Meshery provides those or has control over those things today. It does. You just need to.
Okay.
Not that I want to talk more about competitors like Tetrate on the call, but curious. So highly familiar with had been there during their founding, and it had. There's a reason why Layer 5 is a thing separate from Tetrate. Much respect for those
Mhm.
guys, and actually we have a real great relationship with them in specific. Um, they've got this next gen RBAC, or what do they call it? But it's I guess a step after ABAC. There's attribute,
Mhm.
and
Yeah. The
I just wanted to raise it up for exactly what you were about to do for a comment.
Yeah. No. I'm just kind of thinking. Yeah. That that access control research. I think some of that stems from a scientist at NIST, and I just forget. I I wasn't focused on it, but I think it was interesting. I started to look into it months ago.
Okay. Yeah, no. If you ever do, I'm curious for your comments. But yeah.
I haven't. I have an AMD X570 chipset, and I'm one of the guys that has like that USB issue where your keyboard and mouse stops working.
It's like,
Oh my
it's like the dog ate my homework thing.
it is, but at least AMD recognized the problem.
Yeah.
They don't have a fix, but I actually formatted the Windows box anyway. Enough of that. I formatted the box, and the problem persisted, and then AMD's like, "Yeah, that's a problem." So anyway.
That's fine. My apologies, Rudolph. I totally hijacked all this. I hadn't gotten to catch up with Sean in a while. It's nice. And Sean, you had come to mind when I thought like, hey, there's a legitimate. I don't know if you'd say juicy, but there's a legitimate set of thoughts to go around just that one specific thing around an anonymous token, and then well, gosh, as
Mhm.
we're working toward the GA, working toward 1.0, we're going to want to have a lot of things written down about best practices and production deployment type stuff. And so I figured we'd.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. And I'll probably reach out to you in the next week or two because I've been focused lately really on security of DevSecOps pipelines, um, and looking at Kubernetes security. Because what we're finding is that people will deploy pipelines, um, but it's the security not in the pipeline, but of the pipeline. So
Oh,
I've kind of been looking at OWASP, the OWASP software assurance maturity model. So
sure.
separate conversation, but interesting.
Yeah. I'm game. Um, well, fair enough. Good. Now that I put Sean on the hot seat, Alonso, we have perpetually not dug into the multi-language support in Meshery docs. Rodolfo, is it okay if we have this as a topic here?
Yeah, sure. I tried to find the issue or the pull request, but I didn't find.
It is in the main Meshery repo. Um, Alonso, you had some notes, I think, coming out of, was it the Meshery development call? But I guess the point here is like we do have a little bit, we do have some time on this call. And Alonso, I wonder if we can significantly advance your effort by giving this a review here of the a review of the selected plugin, and then a review of how that plugin and its requirements will affect the rest of the docs. So I'll grab those links. But Alonso, are you there?
His mic seems to give an issue.
Let's see. So
I'm sorry. Am I hearing? Do you hear me myself right now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to tell you that the plugin doesn't work at all.
oh no.
I don't know which are the conditions for it to make it work with the repo, but I didn't be I couldn't I didn't make it work with anything. With the post, the Jekyll generates like a post with a date in its name and such. It works very good with posts in that manner, but with pages that we are having a lot of pages and organization of pages with front matter. That way, it doesn't work at all. So I grab another alternative that I saw on YouTube, and that work. And the thing with it is a plugin that in the default main uh, in the default I forgot the word, sorry, but in the default template, it kind of gets the language variables from the front matter of the site and from the pages, so it does the work. And
Got it.
you could go to the pull request that I updated yesterday. You maybe will see the Netlify generated preview, and you could make a review over there.
Nice. Very good. So here's that second plugin. The way you describe it sounds fairly promising. It sounds like it sounds like we were sort of aligning for it in advance already. That on each individual docs page. By the way, I'll just familiarize everybody real quick because I know as because if Sean keeps showing up, he'll eventually be in here as well, along with all the rest of us. And so this is in the Meshery repo. There's this slash docs, and this is the Jekyll based site. For each of the pages, we had in the recent past gone about putting a small variable at the top of each file. hopefully this doesn't make me a liar. Okay, this one does make me a liar. We'll go back. Okay, so this one doesn't. So this particular markdown file, it's a document about Meshery's extensibility. As a matter, this is funny. It's a document about Meshery's extensibility on providers, which talks about RBAC and authenticating and authorization. So it's kind of. But when we look at the markdown itself, the this isn't the best easiest way to read this, but just there's this section, these three dashes is the metadata, is the front, to use the Jekyll nomenclature, it's the front matter for a particular page, whether that page is a post or a piece of news or a document or whatever's inside there. Doesn't really matter. That's, in fact, that's just up to us, whatever that is. And also the variables that are used here, these are also up to us. There's some built-ins that Jekyll comes with, but we can make up stuff just like this one. We just made up this language one, and we're beginning to tag each of the individual markdown files, each of the individual pages with language moniker. And so it sounds like, Alonso, this last plugin that you were looking at, leans into that type of thinking, that type of a system.
Yes, it does. It's not a plugin. Actually, it's just a script.
Oh,
That's all.
see.
And I think it's better because the cleaner we have the gems and stuff is going to run much leaner. I don't know, but we have some variables that you may see redundant. That there are a lot of variables that repeat the same language moniker, but it has to be like that for us to make the filtering and showing sometimes the tree of contents on the left of the sidebar, and sometimes in the front of the indexes of each section, and sometimes for changing the language of the whole page. So there are a couple of variables in the front matter that are filtered in some if statements in several files. Also, I grabbed the data folder in the docs
Yeah.
folder, yeah, and I have been making there some changes to make this work with a lot of the sections that were only accessible in English. So
Sure.
I'm making replications of folders to make it the filtering where the language is selected in the drop down component.
Okay. Man, I, you're not leaving me much room to complain here. The only complaint, the only thing you could possibly complain about is you're saying, hey, in the front matter, depending upon the type of content that you're dealing with, you may end up, it may take a couple of variables in the front matter to differentiate between, you know, to get the whole thing done, and you know.
Yeah, that may be annoying if you see that sometimes because there are three variables with the same value. There's language, lang, and categories, in plural, with English and with Spanish and with Turkish in this case.
Oh, I see.
So, that may be needed some refactoring in the future, but with this scripting, it is working right now. The only thing that I need right now is the full Turkish documentation translations, and we're done with this.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Is the script that you've referred to, is that what's currently in this PR?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
In the includes and in the data folder.
Uh, well, for
It's
my
in the
part, I'll
Yeah, no, sorry.
Well, it turns out that this is relevant to the CI call because in order to, it sounds like each time that the docs are built, we would need to invoke that script to make sure that, yeah, to make sure that it's multi-language.
Yeah, I've found when I make a PR, it's the Netlify new preview is generated every time, and it has function me. Yeah, that one. So I have seen that it works, and it kind of relief because yeah,
Sure.
and maybe there are some broken links that I told yesterday to Chandra
Mm,
there are broken links in the actual English site. I have identified a couple, so we need to change that. But I really think that the more faster the review on this is done, in the acceptance or the denial, we can move forward because there are some documentation pages that are in constant change, and that has to be replicated to English and Turkish.
sure. Yeah, totally. Also very so this is fantastic and nice work. As a matter of fact, Alonso, like just a 2 to 3, just a couple minute demo of this on tomorrow's community call might make some sense. It'd be good for you to get some airtime, and it's something you've been working on for a long time. So good to good for you to get some feedback on it. For my
Excellent.
part, I'll take a look later today to try to help you know support, and I'll probably message Mert, the Turkish guy who was doing some of that translation. Um,
Excellent. I did some translation with Google Translate, but I may think that they are wrong.
sure. Um, and then yeah, if don't be yeah, please don't be shy about if you do find broken links on the in the current version. But please don't be shy about raising up those issues. There's one other thing here that it's a bit bothersome, and it sounds like from the way that the script works, don't I think it'll just be a sequencing of potentially two different scripts. Um, the docs right now, they don't have a version. Like you're not able to switch between one Meshery version and the next in terms of like the documentation. Um, as we get further and further along, that becomes more and more important. And the way that that's approached, so the template and the theme that we're using, it doesn't have native support for multiple languages or native support for um, different documentation versions, but both are accomplishable, and you're accomplishing the multiple language. The multiple version similar will need sort of a similar script. So I'm just calling it out as like an item to land after this has landed. So it's good.
Yeah, totally. I did a little proof of concept and show it to Chandra, but we were very in deep within in the beginning. We were having troubles with the plugin, so I left it out for a moment. But if we took this same idea and approach, I think there will be several folders and files replicating, and that could be a problem. But it is totally makeable. It is totally doable with the same approach.
Okay, storage is cheap,
Yeah.
so yeah, very good. Alonso, thank you very much. Rodolfo, back to you.
Yeah, it looks really great. I think in the CR or DevOps part, I think it's already made, right? Because Netlify deploys the version of the docs already. It seems.
Uh, and that question's for Alonso, right?
Yeah, I think Alonso that is already set in Netlify, right? Or should we need to do anything else?
Uh, no, I think it's already said in there in the preview. It's like I watched the same in my local. Yes, it works the same.
Okay, yeah. So I think we only need to fix those broken links and to solve the merge conflicts, and I think we can merge this one.
Wow, nice, very
Yeah,
good.
thanks Alonso for that. So to the next topic and final topic on the meeting notes. Um, let me see. Oh yeah, this is for replying the comment of Aizuku about the Meshery's Helm charts. But I think yeah, Lee, we already wrote that before, but he will write again in the GitHub issue.
Right. Yep. Totally. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, after that I will talk again with Aizuku in order to to continue on this one, because I think is it will really useful to automate um, this build of the measuring charts.
Yep. Yeah. Very much. Those that are earnest about using Meshery, they will frequent the Helm chart. Like it'll see high use.
Yep. And another thing that I just remembered is I have an issue about EC2 GitHub Actions in order to automate some deploys. Could you let me know when you or Abhishek or Cuma will release Meshery Cloud version? Because I want to see that in order to automate that with GitHub Actions.
Um, Currently, we don't have an action that would deploy to EC2, but rather we just build and release the Docker image, and we've got a watcher instance that's running in the EC2 instance, which would update the image as soon as it has been pushed.
And so, Abhishek, do you need any further? Yeah, is the EC2 action needed? Would that help with running a migration script, or is that just is it not that helpful?
So the EC2 instance would be of help because uh, if we need to revert and do other release operations, it would be straightforward with the EC2. Rather, we don't need to basically SSH into the EC2 to do manual stuff. The manual stuff would be automated.
So Rudolph was asking for some specifics on as he investigates an EC2 action, what should he have the action do?
Uh, is there an issue? I can list it down in that.
Yeah, there is. It's on Meshery Cloud.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'll put.
the, is the issue number 57.
Sure. I'll put a list on that. No issues.
Yeah, I have been playing with that EC2 GitHub action, but the thing that I don't know is uh, which are the steps to do the manual deploy, right? I want to understand that in order to automate with GitHub Actions.
Right. Okay. It's just a set of make commands. I can maybe put that in as well in there.
Yeah,
Can I
please.
also participate even as a silent, quiet, not speaking? Because so your words were like my words in my mind. Sorry, Rodolfo. It I have the same. Maybe not the same, but yeah. For me, everything has to be at least once done manually. And I'm a little bit crazy, and sometimes even multiple times, so you actually know it by heart. And then when you automate, you know exactly what you want to do. But that's a crazy approach. There is also,
Yeah,
it's not mandatory to be like this. It's good to automate anything at any moment, but it's less work to clean up stuff if you know what you're doing. So I will promise I will shut up and let you guys to put the questions, but I would love to be included.
Abhishek?
Um, I couldn't. I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah. Adina was saying, hey, that's interesting. When you guys talk about that, can you loop me in? Can you loop in Adina? And so,
Sure. Basically, I'm going to put in all the inputs in the issue that has been marked here. So I can mark Adina as well on that.
okay. Nice. One other, all right, good deal. We just have a couple minutes left. There's one other thing that it's related to this. I hope that this is interesting to everyone. It's related to what Rodolfo was just saying about like, hey, I want to help out here. I'm a little bit, some of the details about how it is that a release is made are unknown to him because he hasn't done one before. And I thought we could, it's actually a very short topic. So I thought we could show it real quick. And actually, we can confirm whether or not, Rodolfo, you have the necessary permissions to do so in the system. So, Rodolfo, if you don't mind, if you're able to share the Meshery repo,
Yep.
when, every time that someone submits a pull request, various workflows kick off, various tests are done, humans come and do peer reviews and comment. Next thing you know, eventually the thing merges. When a PR merges, in any of the repos, an edge release is made. So new edge release of that release channel it becomes available. The Meshery stable release channel, there's the a new release only goes into the stable channel when not when a PR merges to master. That's when an edge release is made. A stable release is made when a human goes, if you go when they go to the releases section. So if Rodolfo, if you were to navigate back to the main folder
Okay.
and the lower right hand side, there's a releases. There's like it says 82. So releases here. So the process is right here. Very very simple process. It's so what we're seeing here on the Meshery releases is that there's a release in draft. Now it says that Lee drafted this release, although technically I didn't. All that I think has happened is that I was the last one to touch the system, so it sort of reflects as me being that person. But anyway, there's a small GitHub action that every time you merge a PR, anyone merges a PR, a small GitHub action runs. It invokes a small bot called release drafter. And that small bot just captures the subject line of the PR, the person who, the author of the PR, and the PR number. So basically what you're seeing right there, the general, the documentation, it just comes over, and in advance of a release being made, it just automates the compilation of release notes. So it's just every time a PR is merged, it grabs the title and a link to it and it puts it in here. And it also generates what it thinks will be the title of the next release. It thinks the title of the next release is V051. And it's wrong, but it's taking a guess based on semantic versioning, because we follow semantic versioning, and so does release drafters, so do a lot of things. If you scroll, and so that's under draft, it's not public, it's not part of the stable release yet. If you The way that a release is actually made then is if you go over and click on, so that bot is just helping us get to a point where we can just click, okay, release. So Rodolfo, let's say that, and this is going to happen probably later today. So, because we want to get the V050, the final release out, hopefully today. We want to announce it. We want to tell people. Right now, the latest release, if you scroll down just a little bit, it's V05, it's release candidate 4. We've gone through like 3 different beta releases and 4 different release candidates, and I think we've worked out most of the bugs. I think I've been asking people publicly for a while, are you ready? Are you ready? I think we're ready. Um, so the process is, if you go back to that drafted, if you click on edit, here's what's manual for making a release. And it's intentionally manual because it's, a human should decide we're okay
Yep.
with it. This is good. So in this case, you would change the suggested tag number to V050.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the subject line, it would be Meshery space V0.5.0. And that's it. Then you click publish release, and that's it. Then the workflow kicks off. It builds the stuff, and so everything else is automated. So at one point, we were saying, hey, I was asking in the community, does anyone want to be the release manager for this release or for the next one or what have you? And naturally, people say, well, that sounds pretty interesting. Like I want to raise my hand, but I'm not really sure what that entails. And part of what it entails, like this is the smallest part. It's like, okay, I actually release the thing. The harder part is like, no, it's the herding of cats and the hey, we need to write up a couple of blog posts that explain what these new features are. We need to make sure that was documented there. We need to make sure that our bug count is of a such and such thing. And so, and then that's kind of the rigmarole around. But the actual act of making the release is just this.
Yeah, the final is the simplest, right? Only click on publish, right? Yeah, but yeah, maybe we can write down which are the steps to create a release, as you mentioned that track all the issues, write blog post that explains the new features or something like that. Maybe we can write down that in order to get know for everyone.
Totally. I've got a doc. Yep. Yes. Sending that doc now. So it mostly says what I just said. And yeah, so for the V0 6.0 release, which wouldn't be too much further out from now, maybe about 4 to 6 weeks, somebody else can do this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Here we go. Here's the doc. I'll put a link to the doc right here.
Yep.
I think it's complete. So anybody's welcome to do this. Also, other people, yeah, anybody's welcome to host these calls and things that we're doing. So there's some rotational positions around here. With that, Rudolfo, I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, I think it's everything for today. So thanks everyone for joining on this meeting, and remember that this meeting will happen every other Thursday at 12 p.m. PT time. So I think, yeah, around this hour. So happy to see you all and see you later.
Nice. Thank you,
Bye.
guys. Thank you, Rudolfo.
Nice.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.